Welcome to Flash Video Basics Part 3. Today we are going to create a load bar here, which is going to show us how much of our FLV video is loaded. So last time we made our rewind and our play buttons, and there's a different video clip in here today, but you can continue with the same clip. So let's go to the layers, and I'm going to create a new layer and call it loader. Let's get the rectangle tool, and I'm going to be using a black stroke with a white fill. So now let's just drag out approximately where we want our load bar to be, something like that. Okay, and let me get in a little closer on this. So I want to create a beveled edge, so it's inset. So I'm going to select this right stroke and then shift select to select the bottom. So now I have both of those selected, the bottom and the right. And I'm going to come down to the color, and I'm going to make it a light gray color. So now it has kind of a 3D inset look to it. Okay, I want to select all of this and turn it into a movie clip. So I'm going to double click and make sure you have the stroke selected with it, and F8 to convert to symbol, and I'm going to call it loader. Okay, now I'm going to double click it to go into edit mode. Okay, so first thing I want to do now is I want to change this white center. I want to convert it into a movie clip because I'm going to be using ActionScript to change its width. So I'm going to select it in F8, and I'm going to call it load bar. Okay, so I want to get this load bar on a layer by itself underneath the stroke. So a quick way to do that is to just right click on it and choose distribute to layers. And what that does is it's dropped the load bar onto its own layer underneath the stroke. So let's just call this stroke and lock it. Okay, so I want to lower the opacity of this load bar movie clip just a little bit, since everything, the rest of our player controls are also semi-transparent. About 60. Okay, and since I'm going to be using ActionScript on this, I'm going to have to give it an instance name, and we'll call it load bar. Okay, so now we're done in here. Now we can go back out to the main movie. Okay, we've finished our movie clip, and inside of it we have the beveled stroke and the load bar movie clip, and we need to give this whole thing an instance name in order to use ActionScript on it. So I'm going to call it loader. And let's start writing our ActionScript. So we're going to go to that first keyframe in the actions layer, open up the actions panel, and quickly review some of the previous code. We have our net connection, our net stream, our embedded video object on the stage, and we're calling the play method to load our FLV, and we have our button code that we wrote last time. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an interval that will call a function we're going to write at periodic intervals. And you use the set interval function to do that. So I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it video interval. Okay, and now I'm going to call the set interval function. Okay, to this function we need to send the name of the function that we want it to call. And in a minute we're going to write a function called video status. And then you need to tell it how often to call that function. And it expects a number in milliseconds. So if we put in 100 milliseconds is 10 times a second, which is a pretty good number. The reason we set it equal to a variable here is if we want to clear this interval later on, to stop it, you need to give it this name. It's the interval ID. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is to create a variable that we're going to be using inside of our function. And this variable is going to store the percentage loaded of our video. So I'm going to call it AmountLoaded, and it's going to be a number. Okay, so now we're set to start writing our function code. So I'm going to come down and say function, and we're calling this function video status, and we're not going to be sending any parameters to it. So this is going to be called 10 times a second, and each time I want to set AmountLoaded equal to the percentage downloaded of our video. So I'm going to say AmountLoaded equals to find the percentage, I'm going to be using two properties of the NetStream object. The first one is going to return to us the total number of bytes loaded so far, and that's called BiteLoaded. And I want to divide this by the total number of bytes that our FLV file is. And to find that out, we use bytes total. So this calculation will return a number between 0 and 1. So say my video is 100 bytes, and so far we've downloaded 50 bytes. This will return 0.5 or 50%. Okay, so now we're going to set the width of our load bar movie clip. So we have the loader movie clip on the root timeline, and inside of it is our load bar movie clip, and we're going to be setting the width property. So I'm going to take that AmountLoaded variable that we just calculated, and I'm going to multiply that by the total width of our loader movie clip, because that's the width that we want the load bar to be at 100%. So we're going to come back out. I'm going to highlight the loader movie clip and come down to the properties panel, and we see the width is 217.9. Of course, in the real world, you'd round that to a clean number, or better yet, use ActionScript to find the width, but this will work for now. Okay, so we're going to 217.9. So 10 times a second, it's going to come in here, calculate that percentage, and update the width of the load bar based on that. So let's close the function. Now if you're loading your FLV from your hard drive, it's going to load almost instantaneously, so you're not going to really see the load bar doing anything. So I've put in a URL to an FLV on my website just so that we can see it moving. So I'm going to test the movie, and we can see the load bar movie clip is getting wider based on the number of bytes of video that have been downloaded. We can actually pause our video, and as you can see, it's still downloading data. So pausing the NetStream doesn't stop it from downloading more video data. So we have our load bar, and in the future we're going to be adding functionality to this to allow us to seek to certain parts of the stream. And that's the tutorial that's coming up next. The most requested tutorial, I think, in Flash video, the scrubber bar.